Welcome, team players and NFL fans around the world. In this episode, we're discussing the 2022 New York Giants. The hosts here of Local Football Flavor have watched over 1,000 hours of footage across the league this year, mostly the coaches' tape, to get inside valuable knowledge about what the Giants did that made their season a complete skyrocket to 6-1, getting into the playoffs on the decline, but pulling out that all-important road win. Enjoy the 2022 New York Giants. Welcome to Local Football Flavor, connecting the fan bases of the NFL. Welcome, team players, to the New York Giants year in review. 2022, the Giants were coming off of one of the worst five-year aggregate records entering into this year. They wake up starting week 8 and they were 6-1. You get to the playoffs, not only did the Giants make the playoffs, in the last week of the year, they were able to take the week off against the hated Philadelphia Eagles. Then they won a road playoff game. If it wasn't for Dallas pulling it off the next night, it would have been the greatest thing ever in New York history. They win a road playoff game when they probably were projected to have a top 3 pick. Come on, you gotta love that. That being said, that does bring up a lot of interesting questions about how this happened. Obviously, Daboll enters the situation from Buffalo, and he looks at the offense and recognizes a couple of important things. First, Daniel Jones kind of is what we think he is. He double taps the ball consistently instead of firing it out. Now, what I mean by that is when Tom Brady made up his mind he was going to throw it, there was no wasted bring it down, touch it with my other hand. It was just boom, out. Rodgers is the same deal. Every one of the quarterbacks you would consider a top half quarterback in this league does that. See it, throw it. The Tuas of the world are the ones that double tap and keep thinking about it and tap it some more, which works fine if you're in college with an Alabama offensive line in front of you. Daniel Jones didn't have that. Daniel Jones has an offensive line in college that wasn't that great, and one in the NFL that is worse. The thing that has become evident with this team is that he does not complete passes that are at an angle. What I mean by that was he passes the ball to people who are running laterally to the line of scrimmage so he can see them coming across the field, and as long as they are at the same plane of depth, he can connect it. The other route that he completes are comebacks-curls, meaning that the receiver is flat-footed or running towards the line of scrimmage. The reason that this is relevant is because it is incredibly limiting. Now, I need to make an important distinction here. Those are not the only passes Daniel Jones throws. They just happen to be the only ones he completes. So whenever we're looking at a receiver going downfield on a vertical, a post, or a corner, those don't get completed in this offense. And by the second half of the season, when the Giants were having their decline, which is to be projected, you started 6-1, you weren't going to maintain that winning percentage. But a big reason on the field that it started coming back where teams started playing trail position on a receiving core that was beat up. So that is how you cover a curl route, because the guy would turn around right into you, interception. Taking that route, specifically the curl route, out of Daniel Jones's repertoire basically took him out of being a relevant passer in the NFL. And he developed happy feet the second half of the year where he was afraid to throw an interception and started running it. The New York Giants have one of the highest percentages of third downs throwing the pass short of the sticks, which again is not a good thing. So, Bob, as good as the Giants started and Daniel Jones was rediscovered as the year went on under the Daboll system, I want you to point out the shining knight in armor that the Giants relied upon here, now, and always.
Who let the dogs out, baby? Saquon Barkley. One of the most Oh my god, I can't even say how much I like Saquon Barkley. When you look at the Giants and you think about, okay, what does this team do well? What they do well is they run the ball. Where you said the offensive line stinks is garbage, yeah, that's true for the pass. Where it's not true is for the run. Their rush offensive line is one of the best in the league, actually, because when you look at what's going on the ground for the Giants, you take Saquon Barkley and you pair him with what is now a rushing quarterback. I don't like to say that because he's not as electric as Justin Fields or Lamar Jackson. But when Daniel Jones keeps the ball keeps moving down the field. And ultimately, when you look at a team and you look at their successes, you want a team that can move the ball. Now, where this all goes awry is when you can't use Saquon Barkley. You're down by 14, you're down by 20. Okay, I try to use Saquon again. There was a game, I believe, and I don't remember, I think it was against the Detroit Lions, actually, where they tried to keep themselves in that game. And I think Saquon Barkley had 29 or 59 total yards in that game, which is a sin. It is an absolute sin to not give the ball to someone with quads like that. Now, that's an eyeball thing. You look at Saquon and you say, this guy can kill it. This guy is great. And to be honest with you, they better sign him next year. That is 100% true in my mind. Now, when you look at this team in general and you say to yourself, okay, what did they do well? Well, that running game was really, really good. It actually rated as one of the top running games in the league when you consider what Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley put in. Now, it's not that Daniel Jones can't throw the ball. It's that he can't throw the ball far. He does not throw a deep ball. And when you look at what you want a quarterback to do, you want him to be able to throw all of those throws. But there's only a couple quarterbacks in the league that can do that really, really well consistently. Daniel Jones is not one of them. When you think about what Daniel Jones offers you, it offers you a guy who does make limited mistakes because he's not putting the ball out there. He doesn't fumble the ball very much. He doesn't. I think he had 4 interceptions this whole year, but he only had 16 touchdowns. He had a pretty high completion percentage because he's not throwing these bombs. He's bottom of the barrel when he's thrown. When you think about quarterbacks that throw it down the field, and because of this, it is the downfall of the New York Giants on offense. Is that when they're behind, they can't catch up. They are terrible on third down percentages because if they're behind on the sticks, Daniel Jones isn't going to take the chance. Brian Daboll doesn't trust Daniel Jones, and you can see it in the game plan to make those deep throws. And I mean, it just so happens that their wide receivers are pretty terrible that he's not thinking, oh, I can trust this guy to go down the field and catch the ball. Now, as the season went on, Richie James showed up. Isaiah Hodgins showed up. And we were looking at Wan'Dale Robinson midseason saying, hey, this New York Giants team isn't that bad. And so when we think about what the Giants do well and did well on offense, and that's run, and what they didn't do well on defense, the same can be said about their defense. Their defense was pretty similar, Joe. And I want you to talk to us a little bit about what you saw in that defense that made this just a tale of two halves oftentimes for the New York Giants.
So the defense of the Giants was almost like a running game in reverse, if you will. That pass rush needed to wham into you to wear you down. And it's very contrary to how the rest of the league is and how it's supposed to work. And part of the reason is that it's a very young pass rush. It's a very light pass rush as well. So when we look at the Giants, because they weren't able to really get a foot in the ground in the first half of a lot of games, they were letting up just so much yardage. And when we look at it, they were one of the teams that, because of the lack of the pass rush, teams were able to sit down and really call their shots. And people attack the New York defense based upon their offense. Now, obviously, every team's a little bit like that. But the one thing that the Giants really struggled with is the outside of the numbers game. Starting with the corner up front, the second Jackson got hurt, this defense truly just incinerated. And when we look at why this happened, again, it starts with an inconsistency of pass rush. It took a while for the rookie to get his traction going. But it really was they attacked the outsides against the Giants. And when we look at foundations of a team, their interior D line was good. It was solid. But when we look at the edges of the defense, that was their weakness, and that was really how they got attacked and vulnerable in the second half of the season. Was you just kept hitting the edge on them, and as long as you can run a seal block with your right guard and your right tackle, you can get 8 yards. And it didn't really matter who the running back was. Obviously, they played some really good ones, but even the so-so ones of the world, they kind of owned them, and it was a problem. And another clause needs to be put about the defense. If you take away the first game of the year against Baker Mayfield, their turnover ratio is through the floor. They essentially blew their whole wad, turning Baker Mayfield over 4 times in the beginning of the season, and since then didn't really have it. Now, that's a combination of 2 reasons. You get turnovers because the offense is putting pressure on the other team to have to score, so they have to take more risky decisions. The Giants weren't built that way. The Giants were not built to be able to quickly get up 14-0 and then sack the quarterback. That's not how they're built. They're built like a team that, for the last 5 years, didn't win football games. And the offense took the big step forward. The defense did not. And on the Daniel Jones counterattack, as I can already read the comments you're writing them, yes, he declined in the second half of the year as his receivers got hurt, but that still did not change the fact that he only completed routes that were lateral or comebacks. So, Bob, I want to give you the chance of the final word here as we conclude the 2022 New York Football Giants.
So, a couple of things. One of the most important things we can notice about the New York Giants this year, based off of the eye test and based off of stats, what we see is a team that, just like you said, Joe, could not get their footing in the early parts of these games. They scored 8.8 points on average in the first half, which is bottom 6 in the league. In the second half, they were top 10. In the second half, they were top 10 in points scored. So this is truly a team of 2 halves. Now, also when we consider things, the Giants have a terrible personal trainer. I don't know what's going on with the New York Giants. We talked about this with our guest from the Giants a couple of weeks ago. I mean, more than 2 months now, where the New York Giants always get hurt. They always flash talent, and they always get hurt. Now, where this comes into play is in your edge rush situation, like you were saying. This comes into play with Kayvon Thibodeaux. This comes into play with Azeez Ojulari. These 2 guys, when on the field and playing together as a unit, as a pair, make this Giants defense really something to worry about. When they're not on the field together, I don't have to worry about it. Kayvon Thibodeaux has a lot to build on for next year. He had 4 sacks this year. But he's also out of position a lot. And that's a young guy's thing. They're out of position a lot on plays. Azeez Ojulari, when they're on the field, and I even texted this to you during the Giants playoff game. I said, is Azeez hurt? Is Kayvon Thibodeaux hurt? Because I was like, the game's over if that happens. They were able to stop the Minnesota Vikings because of health. And one of the biggest things about the New York Giants is health. When we look at them heading into next season, and we say, okay, they did good this year, but there's a lot that could have gone wrong. This team easily could have been so mid that we wouldn't even want to talk about them right now. And that goes a lot to say with what they're doing with their team. In a division that is designed to break you over the head passing, they aren't built for it. And in a division that has really good runners, you're looking at Robinson, you're looking at Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, you're looking at Tony Pollard. And yes, I dare I say Zeke can still move the ball 1.2 yards at a time. The Giants can't even stop him. So when I look at the New York Giants and I look at their division opponents, and we say, okay, you're going to play these guys 2 times a year, I am not confident that this specific unit that we saw coming out of this year is going to be able to do that leading to next year. And it all hinges on health, and it all hinges on Daniel Jones. Can you prove it to me as a passer?
Hope you guys enjoyed the 2022 Giants. Over here, we have other footage we have done from the NFC East. And over here is our next team, the Green Bay Packers 2022 in review. Yeah, we talk about that guy named Rodgers a little bit, don't we?